Alright, MA Marignon, turn 52. No major battles expected, so this is probably the turn we get elfed. Nope, looks like we another turn without getting elfed. Here's our gateway, bringing patrollers in, more of the summons which we discussed, some site searching, which mixed results. Mercury Pond, that sounds like could be some water, plus other things possibly, so that's nice. And then this is definitely Earth Gems, which is good. We need more Earth Gems, absolutely. And then a bunch of other searches that don't work, but you know, that happens. Bandar does proclaim another prophet, although hopefully they don't have their pretender back in yet, because part of their bless is incarnate, so the blood vengeance and the regeneration is currently offline, and we are hoping to close this war out before that comes online. So yeah, let's see. Asphodel attacking Vanheim in Fascia. Interesting. Okay, so this is the main Vanheim stack, looks like. And not dissimilar from what we've seen before, but just more, with a ton of their sacreds in here. You know, I was going to say not a ton of mage support, but this is actually quite a bit of mage support for the elves. A lot of air gems. So yeah, this is looking like probably air elementals. Although these guys maybe, yeah, I mean, they're certainly kitted out for some thugging. So I'm not sure what the air gems are for on them. And then this is probably, no, this is another kitted Van Jarl. Doesn't really look like there's any Vanadrats here. Yeah, so we have a prophet, so probably no storm. And then, yeah, I guess that would block his birds. From flying, that is. Yeah, and here's some mist form going off, some legions of steel coming from one of his dwarf. So it looks like, you know, kind of a mix of thugs and his sacreds and like these, you know, human Einherrs, which are pretty nasty mundane troops. So absolutely a scary army. And then Russ, or not Russ. To me, they will forever be Russ. But no, this player is Asphodel in this game, and they have some Etten. I think he's like an Etten hero. Definitely not familiar with this fellow, but he looks super dangerous. Death 3, Nature 3, absolutely relevant thug paths. He's also been given some death gems, maybe, you know, to help buff himself up, take less fatigue. He's got full kit on him, as well as plenty of mages here that are going to, you know, cast some point buffs on him. So this is looking pretty scary. That said, you know, thugging into all these Einherrs is going to be a bit difficult. I'm assuming he's pretty ready for shock damage. And the birds certainly aren't going to be able to do anything, although they probably did manage to get the point buffers. And probably not the full script went off, although certainly if Asphodel has been doing some scouting, he's going to be aware that there's going to be some birds. So, you know, that may be why there were so many point buffers, so that, you know, he could get everything off on turn 1 with each of them casting a different buff. And it is looking like it's working. And, you know, that's the thing about, like, these Elven Sacreds. I have not played Middle Age Vanheim, so I'm not super familiar, but yeah, right, with this relatively low strength, you know, they're just not actually that impressive in terms of their damage outlay, and, you know, the bless that's been given to him is kind of more defensive, and, you know, this is another situation where Blood Surge is doing nothing for him. And the Twist Fate is nice, absolutely, but it just doesn't make them, you know, at all killier. Now, he does kind of have some killy elements here, you know, with his human troops, but, like, 20 slash is, for a situation like this, not great. So really, he probably would be wanting to rely on his thugs getting in, which is, I think, you know, the birds are maybe doing him a disservice here. Although I will say that I do like, you know, a group of birds going in turn 1, but maybe a smaller amount of birds. Also, a lot of his thugs were set up for like chaff clearing duties with a frost brand, and I suspect, yeah, so I mean, you know, this guy with elemental armor, right, he's gonna have, only 10 cold resistance for some reason. Probably put stone skin on himself, because I'm hoping to keep that shock resistance up. Actually, only shock resistance 10, so that's a little on the low side, and I'm kind of surprised we're not seeing more lightning. But still, 30 protection, like with Moss Body and 10% regeneration. It is going to be pretty tough to take out, and like certainly, you know, these birds and the what are these? Of course, Vans from Vanheim. So like they're not going to be able to seal the deal, and he's not actually very killy. You know, he can swallow guys, and you know he's got his lightning spear, but he's just going to be killing guys one at a time. So I think there's a pretty good chance that this battle, you know, times out. It's going to be a while, but you know, without many of the Vanheim thugs actually like making contact, and like I said, even when they make contact, mostly, you know, what we were seeing is frost brands. Maybe if they'd had some great swords of sharpness or something like that, they'd be in a better situation. But yeah, I think this player kind of has the same problem really that I've been having, right? Or he's got a pretty good army, but it's just not. It doesn't really have any super combatant answers, and so I think the Asphodel player saw that, right? Recognized it. And it's looking like they may decide, like, this may be their next move, right? They're like, okay, like, Fascia and Vanheim are both really weak, right? So they moved in on Fascia, and now they're wasting absolutely no time, and they're, moving right in on Vanheim. Now, I think this army is, like, in Fascia's territory, so, like, are they going to continue into Vanheim proper? We'll see, but I don't see why they wouldn't, since it's looking like they're going to destroy. This is probably Vanheim's only army. Certainly it's their most powerful army. So, like, why wouldn't they keep rolling into Vanheim? So in some ways that's good, right? Because that means they're less likely to end their non-aggression pact with us, and we'll be free to move against Fascia. Or not Fascia, Phlegra. Too many PHs here. But it's also bad news because, like, Asphodel's probably going to overrun Vanheim relatively quickly, and it may reach out to Man and or Ulm and suggest, like, hey, it might be time for you guys to move in on Vanheim to make sure that Asphodel doesn't come away with too much here. So, like, yeah, I think actually we're about to get the attacker route, although Vanheim is probably the defender, I would guess, in this case. And, like, even if Asphodel routes off here, I think they've done more than enough damage. Yeah, so there's the auto route, I think, although he may have routed earlier. But yeah, I see armies of Asphodel are routed. But he's not going to be able to escape, right, of course. And, and some of the air mages, I'm guessing, yeah, were not set to advance and cast spells. Some of them were, so, like, that was good. But the guys that, weren't, they just make Phantasmal Warriors. So even though a lot of units of Vanheim have, run off or died, the Phantasmal Chaff, is just coming in to make sure that Vanheim, like, also, officially, like, loses this battle, right? Because now we have armies of Vanheim are routed, and, like, yeah, we'll see. It looks like Asphodel's going to make it off first, so I think technically speaking, this is going to show as a Vanheim victory. But of course, like, it is absolutely not, right? So, like, Asphodel attacked Vanheim, was defeated. Now, he does lose all the point buffers, right? So that's 3 mages. One of these is a foreign recruit, probably off of a throne, 150 gold. Like, this is significant, yeah, especially these Dryads, although there's a pretty good chance. What do you bet those Dryads were Twiceborn? Let's indulge me. Let's take a quick look. No, not Twiceborn, and neither is this one. Okay, so those are actual losses. So that's, like, significant. That matters, right? But to basically not completely wipe out Vanheim's main army, but, like, certainly neuter it, right? Like, he lost 2 Van Jarls, so, like, already you're starting to get kind of comparable gold loss just in terms of the commanders. And then, we've talked about how the Einhairs are actually pretty expensive for mundane troops, and then losing half of the cap-only Sacreds, who are quite expensive. Like, this is a super rough loss for Vanheim. I would say that the good news is that since Vanheim technically won, they're not going to have as many retreats, but they had a lot of guys actually make it off the field, I think. So in a lot of ways, they have the same problems as though they'd actually officially lost, because, the number of units that are actually left sitting on top of Fascia is probably relatively low. So that's pretty rough. And then Fascia decides to ride out. So that's extra rough for Vanheim. Although it doesn't look like they're bringing too much. This is, like, somewhere in between, full commitment. It looks like all the leaders, though, managed to make it off for Vanheim, right? So they're not going to lose anything more, at least not in this battle, except maybe this crippled guy. But, they're going to take the full brunt of, like, any of the retreat losses. So yeah, that is super rough for Vanheim. That it's a rough business. I've had that happen to me. And then this is agreed upon. So this is Pelagia moving in to take their province. I should have mentioned that I had some crossbow retreats. Dang it. I told them there was one province defense, which is true. There is only one province defense. But because one of our crossbow squads routed, some of the crossbowmen ended up here. But yeah, works out just fine. This is a pretty good looking group too, right? Like, not really overcommitting, but definitely gonna take it against one PD and some random crossbow retreats that you never know could be there. So that's a good sign, right? Signs of competency from our ally. We like to see that. Hopefully their underwater 2v1 goes well for them. It's going to be rough. Yes, this is the Trogs. So we have brought, I think, even more knights than there are Trogs. And the knights definitely should be able to beat the trogs. Like, yeah, that's way too much stuff, but I have an axe to grind with those fellows, so I'll take it. Ideally, we do still lose some knights. That's the thing. Trogs are super killy when they can't trample you, and they can trample our knights. And their trample is pretty nasty too, but like, yeah, this 23 damage claw can be pretty rough. So they're not the best, but they do demand respect, and it is sad to lose some of our knights. I was hoping, since we brought so much stuff, we wouldn't lose anything, but, it is what it is. Bandar decides to just poke their head out, but it's just a ping to see what's on top. And like, yeah, it's the same stuff more or less, minus the one crossbow group. But of course our army is next door and will be moving in this turn, so that might actually be a little deceptive for them. And we have some unexpected events, one of which must be in an attack. Oh wow, this is extremely lucky because this is our capital, and I'm not sure I've even ever seen a plus 400% like tax event. So there you go, Misfortune 3. You can still get some really good events. And then, okay, some local lawman is frolicking instead of doing his job. That's fine. We lose some population. This is probably where we get attacked by Vinemen. We lose some province income somewhere. 10 is rough. Like, that's significant because that's every turn for the rest of the game. 20 is worse. So, I mean, yeah, misfortune has a cost, absolutely. And then I think it is, right? That was, yeah, Rivia. Okay, so this is the attack. Let's take a look, see if our province defense can do... Ooh, okay, so it's more than just Vinemen. It's like they're being led by a Woodhenge Druid, which on the balance isn't actually the worst thing. Sometimes they're being led by an Ivy King. And this actually looks like it might be one of our forts. So that's kind of unfortunate. We probably should have put more province defense here. Getting our forts locked down by misfortune events. The one nice thing about these Vinemen, no morale, right? So like they're not going to rout, which is pretty much our only hope. So like, yeah, they come away with it, and our fort is now locked down by independence. But we'll figure it out. One or two fire elementals should be able to fix that situation. And let's see, the fortification in Bandar log is unharmed. We just have our raiders on top of there. So hopefully we'll get the one turn crack when we bring the eagles in. And yeah, I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. The main thing is still preparing for that war against Falegra. We have gatewayed in our other southern force, so now we have just a ton of stuff in this province. We'll probably split this, I think, into two separate armies to try to push at two separate objectives, in addition, of course, to all the raiding pressure that we plan on applying. So, ideally, we're going to hit all of the bordering provinces with like some witch hunter groups, or probably just actually solo witch hunters that will shoot out a fire elemental apiece. And I think that will overrun a lot of border provinces. Not all border provinces, like this one, we might actually send more stuff at just in case he's patrolling. But yeah, have not really decided exactly how we want to raid this. But the two objectives that our armies would be going after, the first army would have to deal with this. And I don't actually think it's going to be too bad, right? Like Heal It Warriors and Heal It Soldiers, not that scary. He does have some mages here and a few Gigante Warriors, but none of his super combatants, which is important. Because that means that we can concentrate all of our super combatant, killing strength in the other army. And the other army will probably head for this throne. And the throne is defended, and there is a tyrant here. And of course, there's probably tyrants in this army, and tyrants are going to come from this direction. So that's why it's more important that the army headed for this throne is going to have some super combatant answers. You can also see there's a ton of stuff here, including a ton of barbarian horsemen who I think are mercenaries. But again, just these mundane troops, they're going to die to fire elementals and fire evocations, pretty easily. So without mage support, we should be able to roll over groups like this without too much difficulty. This is also absolutely a target for our assassins. And, we do have some assassins, loose in his territory. So they're going to be going after groups like this that are probably only being led by a, normal mundane commander. And so if we get lucky, we might be able to strand some reinforcement groups. So we're going to try to, position assassins all throughout, his territory, places where troops are likely to try to move through. We're actually forging some more of those acorns, and we're going to hand them out to our other assassins here and, send them forward as well. So yeah, you never know with these things, but I am feeling decent about this war, although I may have underestimated, how little or how much Phlegra is using mages, because on this fort we see like a decent stack of mages. So definitely there's some mage recruitment going on. We haven't seen them get used in combat too much, but maybe that's just because his research was focused on his super combatants first. Now he's doing the research that are going to make his mages a lot scarier in combat, and then we'll bring them out in this coming conflict. So time will tell. And then of course, we are trying to get more eyes on the Yis Pelagia conflict, but we're realistically here's our underwater fellow. We should definitely summon in one or two more of these guys. We don't have a ton of death mages yet. We are working on that. But yeah, it's sounding like this war is about to kick off, or maybe has just kicked off. So we're gonna try to continue to keep eyes on that as much as we can, or rather to get eyes on that. And we may run some simultaneous wars here. I'm not really sure, but I feel like if the Phlegra war starts going pretty well, we may jump in on Yis as well, because we've talked about how definitely if I leave this too long, there goes our underwater ally, and will Yis choose us as their landfall target? I think it's pretty likely, right? They wouldn't have to, supposing that Yis totally won this, and that Atlantis didn't take the majority of the spoils. That would leave them with a fairly large coastline that has nothing to do with us. But that coastline is about to be occupied by Asphodel, who's probably number one. They're probably the game leader. It's arguable, and we don't have full information, but they're definitely up there. Now, whether or not Yis knows that, hard to say, but people talk the number one, the really powerful players, most players at this point, are probably at least somewhat aware of who they are. So that makes for a very unappealing landing target, combined with the fact that Asphodel's Dominion is going to start killing that land really quickly. Well, fairly quickly, means that it's going to be a really unattractive coastline, for Yis to try to push into. Now, maybe if Yis was already here, right? If Pelagia wasn't already involved in an underwater brawl, or about to be involved in an underwater brawl, this might actually be a good time to try to jump in and get this coastline away from Asphodel before Asphodel's been able, before their Dominion has been able to kill it off. So in some ways, the Dominion is an incentive to attack when it's about to cover lands that are currently valuable. But assuming that Yis wins, by the time they make it down here, it'll probably already largely be dead. And right, here's the other reason not to invade Asphodel. And I'm sure this isn't the only stack like this. Coupled with the fact that they're a really good player. Whether or not the other players know that, I don't know. But all this to say that, if Yis wins, I just don't think that this is going to be an appealing coastline for them to invade. Then you add to the fact that, right, their sacreds are capital only, and here's their capital. And their capital is just relatively, right, this is the closest coastline. It's already where they have a land presence. So again, and especially if, right now with Phlegra still here, Phlegra is probably the likeliest target for Yis, because I think we're stronger than Phlegra, although honestly, Phlegra is pretty large. So we'll see. Maybe this Phlegran war goes really badly for me. But anyway, if we take over even a large chunk of Phlegra, right, that really doesn't leave Yis with a lot of other targets near their capital. So it's sort of why wait? It's yeah, do I want to antagonize an underwater power? No. Do I want to fight Yis? No. But do I want to wait until I don't have an ally and then have to fight Yis? Definitely not. So maybe it'll be a mistake going in, but maybe it'll provide the pressure that Pelagia needs to actually pull off the win. So I am thinking that really probably do want to get involved in this sooner rather than later. And then also we were at least made supportive noises towards Pelagia, and so I always feel bad when you pull back a bit from that. But I think there are good realpolitik reasons to go in. So yeah, we'll see. Bandar, of course, have to finish that business. We don't even need to talk about it. The Eagles are coming in, the armies are coming in. Let's hopefully it'll be done soon. And then there's an absolutely massive stack down here that's probably a lie, right? We know that Shiniyama has been using some army size increasing items, so there's probably not quite as much here as it claims. We will find out, because we're going to send a scout. They haven't cracked the fort. Tianchi, this player is doing an amazing job of building up siege strength. Also, again, highlights that probably this is a lie, because if there was really this much stuff here, surely this would be cracked. So again, I think those army increasing size items are better on the defense than on the offense, because at the end of the day, they are a big lie, and it's easier to detect that lie when you're on the offensive. Related to the potential Yis conflict, we are going to move this huge stack. Well, okay, not huge, but a decent stack of knights. We're going to move them over in this direction, like pretty much in anticipation of fighting against Yis and reinforcing. Also, I mean, Asphodel is a consideration definitely. Like, where are they going to go next? It's not going to take them long to finish off this fascia business. We see a little bit of deep rating from Vanheim, but it's pretty irrelevant. We can also see that Asphodel has moved in here, which I believe like kind of was Vanheim territory, so they're kind of moving in immediately. I was theorizing that like, yeah, maybe they're gonna go after Vanheim. I do think that would be a bit awkward for them because Man is kind of in the way, so I don't think they're gonna like take Vanheim's capital, but they might. They certainly might. And like, yeah, I should probably get in touch with Man at this point because yeah, we're gonna be in contact with them. The other thing too, right, is potentially thinking like, well, I was gonna wait on the war with Abysia, but like, why wait? So I still haven't reached out to the sub. Like, I really am way overdue on that, but yeah, no excuse. So I'll talk to them and see, whether they want to uphold the old nap or not. Like, either way is fine. They definitely have enough forces down here that this is going to be, a bit sketch right now. And was thinking about pulling these knights back, but instead, right, we're just going full recruitment. Actually, we're getting a decent amount of money now, even without like our fire gem shenanigans. Like, speaking of which, we're just gonna twice-born Midas this turn because things happen. We're also twice-borning this caster, so just trying to make some of our more valuable casters a little more survivable. And our god is holding up global enchantment, and when you're twice-born and you die, you don't lose the global enchantment. So another reason to throw a twice-born on him. But anyway, yeah, we're actually just getting a good amount of income now, and so we're able to do like full recruitment down here, like kind of a mix of stuff, right? Knights in the capital, and I think just regular infantry here. Yeah, the halberd guys. And I know I was saying I was planning on using them for defense, which is kind of true, right? We're not going to like start this war immediately again. Like, we'll probably wait until like the first major battles of the Phlegron War and see how that goes. If it goes badly, we probably won't launch these wars, and or maybe we'll be forced on the defensive as these other powers attack us. But if they do go well, then like, yeah, we're probably going to launch like both of these wars. I think my only concern, right, is that if Asphodel sees that we are super busy and engaged in 3 separate wars, including one of which that they're going to be playing, so like they're going to be intimately familiar with all of our failings on the Abyssian front, and like Asphodel gets pretty decent scouting. They can foreign recruit the Harpies, I think, which fly around really fast and they're stealthy, and anyway, they have good scouting, so, and they're good players. So probably they're going to be pretty aware of most of our movements. So certainly if we're in 3 wars, it's absolutely going to be a tightrope act because if Asphodel senses like any kind of weakness, I'm absolutely certain that they will cancel their nap and come at us hard. So we won't be able to leave this front undefended. But again, especially with our fire gem to money situation, we should be able to afford a pretty solid garrison along that front. We don't want to go too nuts because that is kind of a waste of gold. But on the other hand, if it incentivizes Asphodel to not attack us, that's gold well spent in my book. The other thing is, maybe Asphodel is giving us too much credit and figures like, oh, well, he's got Eternal Pyre. He's probably banking like a ton of gems for a Purgatory cast. And in a lot of ways, like, Asphodel is not a good matchup against Marignon because we have pretty good priests, so we have good banishment. We have a national fire spell that like does extra damage to undead. Like, killing undead is kind of Marignon's thing. So in a lot of ways, like, we're not a super attractive target. So, fingers crossed that they don't come in on us. But time will tell. And of course, like, yeah, we haven't actually launched any of these wars just yet. Research-wise, same stuff, going for Construction 8, being greedy. Yeah, we've talked through kind of all these. Enchantment 7 is for Asphodel. We need that army-wide poison resistance buff. And in terms of happenings in the larger world, we haven't actually seen like a ton other than what we've already talked about. Like, it does look like, Eriu is probably going to be able to vulture this. They've cracked it, and that is a throne, which is really nice. Although it might draw them into conflict with Ulm, right? Because Ulm obviously, I'm assuming that Ulm initiated this war with Menchaca since they managed to get a ton more of the territory. This fort is also cracked, so we're going to get to see Ulm in action for the first time. So that'll be cool. And then like, yeah, Ulm is also like possibly an Asphodel like counterbalance, because they share like somewhat of a border, and they're another player that I haven't really been in touch with, so we'll see. We've talked somewhat about like what Airyu could or would do, and they are unoccupied at the moment, and so we share like a really substantial border with them. We're potentially a target. I've talked about why I don't think we'll be the next target, but we might get a non-aggression pact cancellation. You never know, but I think it's pretty unlikely, because again, he's got some new neighbors that he probably didn't have diplomatic contact with, so like no non-aggression pact to have to worry about, and the elves do like that, because then they get their stealthy first attack. I do think we have a decent amount of forging and such going on. We're actually going to recruit another witch hunter here. Next turn we'll probably recruit more paladins. I am still pretty worried about the super combatant situation. Probably want to do some forging as well for magic penetration to make our soul slaying better. We're also going to bring in a sleeper, and that's just to command our armies. This one, like, I don't know, I just want our paladins free and loose to be able to like move around where they're needed, rather than having to lead troops. We could use our grandmasters as troop leaders, but I really want to move away from that, because like these guys, they just they can die to just about anything, especially like strategic level attacks. Like even Seeking Arrow is going to kill this guy, and I really don't want like part of our army not moving because their commander died. So the more I play, the more I'm realizing that it's like you really want your troops on a fairly survivable chassis. Sleepers are mediocre in terms of survivability, but a huge upgrade over our grandmasters. I'm not expecting a ton of strategic level like play from Phlegra, but they have enough air that they could absolutely do some Seeking Arrows, so that's something that could be in our future. And even if it's not in our future for this war, like Yis is a massive air power, right? So Seeking Arrow from them. Basically, like it's late enough in the game that we need to start moving away from like having our armies being commanded by dudes in robes. We're also going to bring in some Great Eagles up here for siege strength, and then let's see, forging some more boots, like normal forging. I don't think there's anything else too exciting in terms of the forging that we're doing. It's kind of all stuff that we've seen before. And then of course, always with the site searching, moving around here, there, everywhere. And this guy is still investigating this event, so fingers crossed that there's like some cool site or something, or we get a Troll King. I don't know. Fingers crossed. We also loaded him up with some gems, and like it's not a huge PD dump, but we have some PD here, so just in case the event goes bad, or some random barbarians attack again. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 52.